Introduce yourself, tell your story.
All right. So my name is Faris Ahmad. I'm from Orange County, California, and I am an ex-vegan of 4 years. It's 2018 now. So I started in 2014. I started on January 1st of 2014. I made it a New Year's resolution that I was going to turn around my lifestyle. I stopped drinking, smoking, and eating pizza and just, acting like a degenerate. And I went on a month-long juice fast. And in that month, I felt very good. I was getting a lot of enzymes into my body through the juices. I felt very good, but after the month was over, I felt I needed a solid diet to sustain myself on this new lifestyle that I was going to embark on. And much of the information that I came across in that time came from vegan sources. So, everything was telling me meat is bad, meat and dairy is bad, and that you have to go on a plant-based diet. And that's exactly what I did. Uh, Lentils, legumes, rice, beans, leafy greens, nut seeds, fruit, just a whole food plant-based diet.
One question, did you want to lose weight with the fast?
No, I think I really wanted to, I felt like shit. I felt like shit, yeah. Um, I was never overweight or anything, although I did lose weight. At the time, though, I had plenty of body fat to burn. And usually after that first fast, you lose a lot of precious fat and you shouldn't do it again. Um, so I didn't want to lose weight. I just wanted greater energy. Really, my intentions into this was to really regain a level of vitality that I had when I was in high school, when I was an athlete in high school. And sure, that did happen that first month. A lot of energy freed up in the body. I wasn't smoking cigarettes or drinking alcohol or partying or eating hamburgers and ice cream, which is most meat. Most people eat meat and dairy through those avenues, hamburgers and ice cream. And for the rest of the year, I went on a whole foods diet, and slowly, there was a loss of libido, insomnia set in, migraines, arthritis, cracking in the shoulders. Um, and I couldn't really build muscle unless I bring back in the whey protein shakes and the creatine. And I really think I only lasted that long that first year was because I had still many of the animal nutrients stored in me. I still had a lot of fat to burn off. Uh, and after that first year, I really just felt, this isn't for me. I felt like shit. My mother was begging me to go back on a traditional diet, the diet that she raised me on. And, I was just spending so much money going to the market and buying organic kale, organic lettuce, beans, and rice. It was ridiculous. So I said, okay, I'll go back on your diet. And her diet worked for me through all of my young adult life. I was on her diet up until I was 18. And that was primarily white rice, lean meat, occasionally fatty meat from lamb, a lot of bone marrow. Growing up as a kid, I had a lot of bone marrow, a lot of yogurt. Yeah, that was it. Our primary carbohydrate was white rice. Got back on the diet, and I swear to you, in that first month, first 2 months, I gained so much muscle back. Libido shot up. Felt incredible. I felt very good. And I slowly started to get into things like making my own kefir. I had learned about kefir at that time.
One question
And then
about the
some,
whey protein. When did you use that? Not when you were
that's
vegan, right?
towards the end, towards the last 2 months that I was vegan,
Okay, okay,
I really just couldn't build the muscle.
okay.
But on the traditional diet, I don't need the whey protein. That's just, meat is the best builder. And it was the summer of 2015. I went to an institute in California to learn about permaculture and super adobe building. If you guys aren't familiar, that is basically learning how to build homes out of the earth and clay, just like our ancestry did all around the world. And I was there for 3 months. And my co-interns that I was sleeping with and living with at the time, there was a few of them who were vegans. And when I would grill meat inside the house on a pan, they would act neurotic. They would hold their nose and go, "Oh God, he's cooking it again," and they'd run out the house and they would tell the site director, they'd complain about me. And so out of consideration for them, I stopped doing it. And I was eating primarily at that point lots of kefir from raw milk, lots of raw eggs and cooked eggs, and some fruit here and there. And also I'd eat dinner with them, whatever they cooked. And they ended up, after a while, having a strong influence on me. And they told me, if you continue to eat the meat and dairy, you're not going to ascend and you're not going to be able to channel divine guidance and be, just, they were into it for religious reasons. And so I let them influence me and I said, I'll give this a try again. And I told her, one of them was a former nutritionist. I told her how the vegan diet really wasn't for me in the past. It kind of destroyed my health. And she said, no, go on 80-10-10, go on a fruit-based diet. That's the way you're supposed to do it if you're an athlete. So I read 80-10-10, and then from September, October of 2015 to February of 2016, I went on the high fruit diet with salads and all that. And that was probably the worst 4 or 5 months of my life. I kept thinking, okay, tomorrow it's going to stop, I'm going to rebuild. Tomorrow it's going to stop, I'm going to rebuild. And no, it's just the fat melts right off of you. You demineralize your bones. Man, I aged hard. I think I did a lot of organ damage to myself in those 5 months. And it was about February, March of 2016. My mother, on one hand, was begging me to come off the diet. And I was about to come off the diet and go back to my mother's diet. But then a book came upon me. Somebody gave me a book called Our Elders Speak. And the book is co-authored by 4 guys who have been in this vegan movement probably the longest, longer than most other people. And the 4 guys are Brian Clement, Fred Beachy, Gabriel Cousins, and Viktoras Kulvinskis. These are guys who got into the plant-based thing since the 50s and 60s. I think most of them are vegetarians in the first few decades and then, evolved into vegans. But they claim that they haven't eaten meat in 30, 40, 50 years. And I read the book, and it was really hearing the information come from Brian Clement that I realized that this vegan diet was dangerous and that I wasn't doing it wrong. So I tried listening to him and doing it his way. And I watched a lot of his lectures, and I really, really recommend any of you vegans who want to hear this from a vegan's mouth, go watch all of Brian Clement's lectures and let him debunk the vegan diet for you. Let him tell you how dangerous this diet really is. And so I went on their diet, which consisted of sprouts, sea vegetables, and algae. And they consist of these 3 primary foods because even they admit that the food you go and buy at the store, the fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds, and legumes have absolutely no nutrition inside of it. Not even the trace minerals, let alone the fat-soluble vitamins. They're not in plants. But small amounts of calcium or phosphorus, they're not in the plants because of the way that we're farming today. The soils are depleted. And they recommend sea vegetables because they're wild plants, and many of the minerals are drawn out to the sea, which is true. I mean, even the Eskimos were eating kelp. So they weren't on entirely a animal-based diet. They were eating a lot of kelp from the sea. And then sprouts, because sprouts is what you're growing yourself. They admit that the foods at the store have no nutrition, but when you plant a seed into the ground yourself, like in a tray, I'll show it to you, and you amend that soil with rock dust, like the way I did it. I got rock dust from volcano deposits, and I also got kelp meal. And I get both those powders and I put it into my soil. And then I also bring in the bacteria through a bacterial spray so that the bacteria can take the minerals up to the plant and thus nourish it. And this is supposed to be the highest source of nourishment. The idea is you cut the plant at home and you put it on your plate and eat it, or you put them through a juicer and juice it. So I literally took this to the highest level possible. I'll show a tray right now.
Yeah.
These are sunflower sprouts. So I have the garden here. I had 10 of these growing at a time. You can't get better than this if you're going to do the vegan diet. And according to them, this is the most nutritious plant you can eat. Well, I'll tell you, this nutritious plant will also damage your kidneys because we're not meant to eat it. So I had that, and I had a bag bag full of supplements. All of them whole food, whole food, nothing synthetic. Whole food B12, D3, spirulina, chlorella, vitamin O green, blue-green algae, I mean, you name it. I
Can you
spend a
show some of them just so people see?
sure vitamin O green, the spirulina, chlorella, enzymes, because in the book they admit you need enzymes because they say we've lost the ability to digest plants. I don't believe that. No, we can't digest plants. He says that because we've been on the wrong food, this is Brian Clement, because we've been eating so much of the wrong food, we've lost the muscle in our intestine to be able to break down the plants. So they go to any length to try and justify this. D3, which I'm getting now from my animal products, no need for supplements anymore. Just a bunch of stuff. And there's one that stands out specifically. In the book, Our Elders Speak, these four tout this as the greatest superfood, blue-green algae. They harvest this. There's a company that harvests this. There's a few companies that harvest this out of a lake on the border of California and Oregon. And this lake turns out, it's one of the most polluted lakes in the world. And there are birds that fly over the lake and shit in it. There's runoff that comes from antibiotic and pesticide-laden farms. There's runoff that comes from like industrial warehouses. And it all gets drained to the lake. And the algae there, which are like in nature, they absorb toxins. They absorb the toxins in the lake and they kill all the fish. And these companies go there and harvest the algae, put it in a capsule and call it a superfood and sell it to us. This stuff will make your brain and nervous system bleed. And because it has certain toxins in there, it gives you this alert, kind of like coffee, but they call it a superfood. And this is by the elders of veganism. If you want a superfood, I hit myself in the head, why not just drink coffee if you want a superfood? It's ridiculous the lengths that they will go to try to, stay alkaline, and it's just ridiculous stuff. So I had been doing all this and, libido's not returning, horrible insomnia and migraines, can't build muscle, joints cracking. And, I think for me, it set in so quick because I'm very active. I'm extremely active. I think if I was more sedentary, I'd have many more years to go. But I'm extremely active, and I was always in the saunas, and I'm a fast metabolizer. I burn fat off very quick. So for someone who's very sedentary and was probably even on a junk food, brownie vegan diet, they probably would have been able to last longer than I am because they're not using up as much nutrition. What I ended up doing, so I went the whole of 2016 on this diet. I had just read their books, and I was trying it for myself at home. It wasn't working. Towards the fall of 2000, so this is all of 2016. This is through all of 2017. And I was so brainwashed into it because I will say the Brian Clement guy, one of the authors of this book, he looked very good. And what I wanted for myself was the highest source of energetic nourishment. I wanted to feel like I felt when I was 17, 16. And I said, okay, if there's somebody who knows how to do it and seems so like, like he knew the truth. He seemed very convicting. I think that's the word. He seemed very like he knew what he was talking about. And I kept suffering, I kept thinking eventually I'm going to be able to metabolize these foods and put on the strength and muscle. At the end of 2016, I was living with a friend in Monterey, California. And when he saw me, he said, man, what happened to you? You look like shit. I knew him from Afghanistan, and I hadn't seen him in many years, so I reunited with him. And he said, you literally look like the kids in the refugee camps who have had their villages destroyed, because my face had drooped down and I looked horrible. And I'm on a living food, raw food diet. And I told him what I was doing, and he said, man, I have to show you meat. Like, please, let me feed you something. You're going to feel better. And I said, no, I'm not going to eat meat. Meat, it's bad for you. Saturated fat and cholesterol. He begged me. And finally, after a week, I gave in, and he took me to a Brazilian steakhouse in Central California. And, I went in and I saw they were bringing different cuts of meat around. And at this time, though, in the fall of 2016, it's been at least over a year since my last bite of meat. It's been a very long time. And the first cut they brought to me was a top sirloin steak. Are you familiar with that cut?
Sure, man. I actually went to a Brazilian steakhouse in Texas. I know exactly
Oh,
what you mean.
yeah, yeah. So that's the first cut they brought to me, a top sirloin steak with that layer of fat on the top. And I looked into it, and it looked very good. I was like, oh man, a steak. I remember this. And the first bite I took, and I swallowed it, immediately the fat, like I digested it, and it went into my brain, and I felt it heal like a hole in my brain. I, like a dying wolf. I literally felt like a dying wolf who came out of starvation. I looked at him, and I told him, bring all the meat. I probably ate 2 to 3 pounds of meat that day. I felt very nourished. It was mainly the fat. I needed the fat. I was literally saturated fat and cholesterol deficient. And I went home that day and I went to sleep. Woke up 12 hours later. I was sleeping at my friend's house. And when I woke up, him and his girlfriend told me, you look like a completely different person. And, for the first time in about a year, my joints stopped cracking. My dry skin went away. I actually slept. I was only getting maybe 5 hours of sleep before that on this vegan diet. And I immediately then knew, okay, there's something to this. How did I just heal so profoundly? And what I discovered, I remember after that, it's not like I just went and started eating meat again. I went back to the veganism, cracks and joints and all that, came again, insomnia came back. And I realized that if I fasted and just ate one meal a day, I got better. And I don't think it was necessarily from the fasting, but literally I was eating less sugar, less damaging plants. So I think most vegans, they end up finding out the less of these damaging plants we eat, the better off we are. Whereas with, a diet in animal foods, I can eat butter and egg yolks and fatty meat all day and I'm just going to feel better. I'll be fine. So I think with vegans, they all end up discovering this. And so even at that point, I wasn't ready to let go of veganism. This is the fall of 2016. We go into 2017 and I'm again trying out the Hippocrates diet, the living foods diet, which is, again, the algae, spirulina, chlorella, blue-green algae, the sprouts, sea vegetables. Most of it's raw food. Very little would have some cooked food, seeds and nuts. And, it's not working. And we go through all of 2017 between me going on the living foods diet. I would stay on it for 2 to 3 weeks. 2 to 3 weeks, I would degenerate. And then I would run back to a primal diet. Raw kefir, egg yolks, butter, and meat. I'd rebuild in a month and go back to veganism and degenerate. And I'd go back to the primal diet and rebuild myself. And I'd say, okay, I'm going to try it again. Except this time, maybe this supplement will make the difference. Because I was so far invested in the ideology and the diet, and I had learned biodynamic gardening, I felt like I had to make some use of the whole vegan movement. To be frank, I wanted to make money off of it, but I wasn't ready to do that until I knew with full conviction that the diet's possible. Not even at that point, I gave up optimal health. I said, let's see if you can even get normal stability on this, how I would get on my mother's food, which is just white rice and cooked lean meat, some yogurt, which is good. It's stable, and I can, penis works. You can go work out. You can sleep well, no dry skin. And I found this couldn't even do that. I took it very far. I would buy a raw living spirulina, not in a powder form, but it's like, harvested, and they ship it to you in an ice container, and you literally eat it in a liquid form. And I thought this may be able to replace my needs for saturated fat and cholesterol. Doesn't work, not at all. It's not a meat replacement. These sprouts, I will say I was harvesting these and juicing them. And because they're living, they kind of give you this energetic nourishment, but you can't live off of it. You do too much of it, and the oxalates inside of it damage your kidneys when you're trying to juice it. And trying to eat these things, you're not going to do it. It tastes disgusting. I was eating them too, but you're still gonna shrivel away if you're just eating salads. So beginning of this year is when I mustered up some money and I said, okay, I'm gonna go to the Hippocrates Health Institute. They pride themselves on being the world's oldest natural health institute. Uh, they were founded by Anne Wigmore, and then it was taken over by Brian Clement and his wife. Even he claims that the food you buy at the store, the kale, the broccoli, the lettuce, the spinach, the nuts and seeds there are just recreational foods. They, first off, don't have the vitamin A, vitamin D, or B12, the building and nourishing and nervous system protecting vitamins that you only find in animal foods. The best you can get from the plant foods, according to Mr. Price, and common sense is the minerals. But even the vegan doctors who have been in this the longest say the minerals are not in the soil. What you go and put like on nutritionfacts.com, that's not a real representation. You have to grow the food yourself because all the soils are depleted. And that's something that our scientists in this country knew 40, 50, 60, 70 years ago, that we're in grave danger of malnutrition and that there's no more nutrition left in the soil. So, let alone 70 years later, what do we have? Our food is grown by synthetic fertilizers and NPK. There's no actual phosphorus or calcium or magnesium in our soil. So I went to the institute and to Brian Clement's Institute. And, I talked to him face to face and I said, look, Brian, I've been living off of basically raw milk and eggs the past few months. And I'm feeling good. And you claim that the Living Foods vegan diet is possible for optimal health, for highest amount of energy, for strong libido. And he looks the part. So that's why I trusted him. I said, show me how it's done, because I've been on a fruit-based diet and that almost killed me. I've been on a starch-based diet and that destroyed my health, I've been on a whole foods plant-based diet and that doesn't work. So show me how to do it. And all he said was, oh, keep chewing. Chew more. Keep chewing. And he was very disturbed when I confronted him because I threw everything that he spouts into his face. He says you cannot eat saturated fat and cholesterol to be healthy. And I was like, I'm on that diet and I'm thriving. But when I go on your diet, it doesn't work. So tell me how you're doing it. And he said, just chew. So I said, okay, fine. And I was there. I planned to be there 3 weeks. And by the third, fourth day, I started to break apart. I ran away. I ran off the institute, took an Uber, went and bought raw milk, started drinking raw milk, came back together, came back to the institute. And then in the next few days, I just had a series of realizations. For one part, so what happened was I went to go get a colonic. And they do this there at the institute. And there was a very old lady there. I think she was maybe Sweden, I'm not sure, or German. She was Northern European. And she said, oh, you look young and healthy. Why are you here? And I said, oh, I'm just here to learn if veganism really works. And she said, oh, okay, what diet are you on before you came here? And I said, I was eating a lot of raw eggs and drinking a lot of raw milk. But I've had segments in between where I try out veganism and it fails and I run back to the raw milk and raw eggs. I was scared to say meat, because they may hang you at a place like this. And she was like, oh, okay. And as I'm rolling over, she's going to put the pipe up my butt. She's doing the colonics. And she goes, have you heard of Aj? And she can't finish the name. It's almost as if she was scared to say it. And I looked at her and I said, do you mean Augenis Vonderplanitz? And she goes, yes, yes. Do you know of him? And I said, oh, yeah, I read his book. He's a great guy. And she's like, oh, he's an angel. I met him before he died. He's an amazing guy. And I asked her, are you on the diet? And she told me, like, shh, be quiet, please. I don't want people here to know. But many of us here are not on the vegan diet. We're on the primal diet. And this is the Vegan Institute, So she's like, yeah, eventually many of the people here, they realize they can't sustain long term. They break down, they fall apart, and they have to go back to the animal products. And I asked her, do you think Brian is lying or is he really doing it? And she said, I don't know. Just take his word for it. And I was like, yeah, he does look great. And so that happened. And when she was doing the colonic, at the beginning, everything was cool. I didn't have much waste coming out. And when she got to my liver, she said, oh, like it feels kind of swollen. And she said, okay, I'm going to push and it's going to feel like a burning sensation maybe. And so she pushed and it felt like fire running down my intestines. And I said, whoa, like what is that? And I looked into the tube where, your colon waste comes out, and it was all of this shit. All of this. The green powders and the green algae I've been taking over the years, they store in your liver. If for anyone else who's interested in this, look up Dr. Lawrence Wilson. Years ago, I read his work and he warned, don't take these algae, they store in your liver. And I thought, yeah, whatever, let's find out if it has a bad side effect. I never felt anything, but yeah, they were all storing in my liver. I'm telling you, there was maybe 2 of these. That amount of green powder was coming out of my colon. It literally stores in you. Not much of it leaves in the bowels. So that happened, and the rest of the time I'm there, I'm listening to his lectures, Brian's lectures, and he's mainly repeating the same things that he says in his lectures online. And I finally realized, this is a lot of bullshit. And when I was close up and personal to him, you could tell he had fake teeth and fat injections around his eyes and possibly a hair job done. So he was giving a false representation of what the vegan diet can do. And then I also found out that, he's taking 35 supplements a day. And he admits this. He takes 35 supplements a day because there's not enough nutrition in the plant foods. There never was nutrition in plant foods. That's what I had realized. That's not the place where we get nutrition. And then I realized he's also doing stem cell therapy because they can't regenerate as fast on the plant-based foods. So I ended my trip there short. It was a 3-week trip. I was only there for 2 weeks, and I booked a ticket. I said, I'm leaving. I'm going back to my raw eggs, milk, and I don't eat raw meat all the time, but mostly medium rare meat. And I began to fact check this guy more and more on the things that he said. And there's one lecture where he's asked by somebody in the audience, what do you think about Weston A. Price and his work? He advocated people ate lots of animal products for their vitamin A and D. And Brian Clement just completely lied through his teeth saying, no, that's not what Weston A. Price said. Weston A. Price said eat plants. Weston A. Price did research on plant eaters. And I believed him until I read the book for myself, which if you're a vegan or anybody into nutrition, you've got to read this book. It's probably the most important book ever written on nutrition. And Dr. Price basically went around the world studying primitive tribes who were still isolated. And he was a vegetarian trying to find vegetarians, and he did not find a single tribe. They were all living, either if they were on the coast, they were living on high fatty fish. So they were in ketosis off of the fat in the fish. And they also supplemented with some land plants, either kelp, the Eskimos even ate kelp, or they would have some starch, but mostly it was animal fat. The Indians of the plains and of North America and Canada, they primarily ate animals nose to tail. So they were also on a high-fat diet because they were eating all the organs, which is high in fat. And then the people in the Swiss Alps or in the Middle East or North Africa, where they didn't have much fatty game or fatty fish, they were still on a high-fat diet, but off of dairy products. The people in the Swiss Alps were eating sourdough bread, cheese, yogurt, and meat once a week. And, they all had this perfect teeth, perfect health, just beautiful people. And he found that when these primitive people went to live in civilized areas and they lived off of fruit, jelly, canned beans and rice, and white flour, they degenerated very fast. And he also found that it was primarily the fat-soluble vitamins in the animal product which contribute to our mental, physical, and spiritual growth. It's all really tied together. A lot of vegans, they think that, the only thing we have to supplement with is B12, but this is a lie. There's so many things you are missing when you exclude animal products from the diet. It's well known vitamin A is, as you know yourself, it's an animal vitamin. It's not in plants. And he has lots of pictures inside this book about people who are on diets deficient in vitamin A, and they're born either if the parents were deficient in vitamin A, the kids are born retarded, or they become infertile. On animal studies, they become blind, deaf, and dumb. And in my experience on veganism, aside from the cracking joints, cracking shoulders, insomnia, and migraines, and teeth decay, I also noticed my eyes were beginning to seep into my skull. And this is also something you'll notice in many of the long-term vegans, such as if you look at Robert Cesar, this dude's eyes are seeping into his head. Brian Clement, if you look at pictures of him, he has older pictures before he did the plastic surgery, and his teeth are decaying and his eyes are sunken into his head.
About Robert Cesar, he also drinks raw goat milk and kefir,
Ah,
but he doesn't eat meat.
okay. Yeah, that guy, he looks horrible.
Oh, he looks horrible.
Yeah,
Probably
absolutely.
the most unhealthy human I've ever seen.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny because my mother used to tell me that when I was a vegan. She would tell me you're one of the most malnourished people I've ever seen in my life. And I'm thinking, no, no, no. Well, tomorrow I'm going to start rebuilding. It's going to start tomorrow. Don't worry. Ridiculous. And I really blame the vegan doctors for this, for spouting this misinformation. One of the guys who will admit the shortcomings of the vegan diet is Gabriel Cousins. And this is also one of those guys who's been doing it for 40 years, or at least has been experimenting with it for 40 years and studying the diet on other people who come to his institute, the Tree of Life Center. And he admits there's many dangers about the vegan diet. He admits you can't get vitamin A. He admits you can't get vitamin D. He admits the B12 is not there. He admits the carnosine and the carnitine and the creatine are not there. And these are all anti-aging, anti-glycation amino acids. I had found in my experience, when I would go on a high fruit diet, I couldn't tolerate fruit anymore. When I would go on a high starch-based diet, I couldn't tolerate starch anymore. When I would go on a high-fat nut and seed diet, I couldn't tolerate nut and seeds anymore. But now, as long as I have saturated fat and cholesterol in my diet, I can tolerate a little bit of everything, like a normal human being, like a normal omnivore. But when you remove the saturated fat and cholesterol, which builds the intestines, builds the joints, the ligaments, which builds the human being, you can't digest even a damn plant. Not a single twig, I mean, fruit sugar will make you go crazy without saturated fat and cholesterol. So it's just crazy the amount of misinformation out there and the amount of people getting hurt and damaged from this. And I'll admit it, I kept going and experimenting with this, with veganism, because I had learned biodynamic gardening, like I had said, and I wanted to make money off veganism. I was committed. I said, I'm going to find a way to make it work. And when I do make it work, I'm probably going to sell sprouts to people at the farmer's market, and I'm going to make this a lifestyle. But after 4 years of dedication, no, there's no way I could do this to people. So now I'm at the point where I'm going to go join a farm soon, take a 3-month internship, and they're going to teach me how to butcher bunnies, how to tend to cows, how to milk goats, and do it all in a holistic manner with the land. And then from there, I plan on starting my own farm and supplying food for myself, for my family and myself, and also selling it to others around me.
Sounds good, man.
Mm. So,
Who do you think is pushing veganism or what it's about?
so I do feel it's being pushed from the top down, but it's part of a much larger agenda. That agenda being to really break apart the national, ethnic, tribal, and family bond, and turning us into individual drones. Who is pushing it? I don't know. It's probably some bloodlines, some royal families. In general, I think it may be those in the upper echelons of society that think there's just too many humans on the planet Earth that we need to find a humane way to make them infertile. So put genetically engineered food in their diets, tell them saturated fat and cholesterol is bad for them, make it uncool to be married now. Most people my age, I know, they're not going to get married. That's just a fact. They don't want to get married. It's now not part of the culture. So I think this has been planned for a while, and just this vegan diet is one of the final bullets at the traditional human being, at the indigenous natural human being. They're starting from way back when they decided to take us out of the wild and into city states. So yeah.
Anything you want to say to vegans or anything else?
So if you're an ecological vegan who believes that eating meat is going to destroy the planet, no, it's not. What's going to destroy the planet is us sitting in our house and ordering this from Arizona, this from New York, this from God knows where, that's from Hawaii, and ordering all these different things to our house. That's not going to save the goddamn planet. If you really are doing this for ecological reasons, go learn how to farm. Go live on a farm and then try to be a vegan. And you'll see that it's not natural, that you have to work with the animals. And that as a matter of fact, you need ruminants, you need goat, sheep, and cow on your land to restore the ecology, to sequester carbon and regenerate the soil. And you'll see you won't need supplements after that anymore. So if you really are sincere about that and you're not just in this to talk shit, go farm. If you're an ethical vegan, you shouldn't really bother and harass people. You should go buy some cheap land in Arizona if you're living in America, and you should go create an animal shelter. And maybe you'll feel fulfilled that way. So my message to vegans mainly is quit bothering harassing people properly. Yeah. And a lot of you guys may be in this because, again, you're thinking that this is the most nutritionally adequate diet, or you believe that our ancestry in the blue zones were all plant-based eaters. Do your own research. Read the book. And the best source, in my opinion, is go on YouTube, and there are probably hundreds of videos of British, Australian, and American I guess, what would you call them? Reporters who go and live with primitive tribes that still exist today in Africa and such places, and they literally live with them and record their lifestyle. You're never going to find a plant-based race. It doesn't exist. They're all eating meat. The more primitive they are, the more meat-based they are, and guess what? The healthier they look and the happier they are. That's just the truth. The more plants they bring in, the quicker they degenerate. There's like a tipping scale, and this, you can notice it yourself. So and also, we shouldn't be too gullible, as I was. I believed everything that these vegan doctors were telling me, and then later in the lectures, or in their autobiographies, they admit that they'd go out and they'd give a lecture saying, don't eat saturated fat, cholesterol, go on a plant-based diet. But immediately after the lecture, they go run to the Whole Foods and buy a tub of ice cream, dairy ice cream, such as Brian Clement. He admitted this in many lectures, that he would eat lots of ice cream while he'd be giving lectures. Or Viktoras Kulvinskis. He was bulimic. He'd give lectures on health and plant-based diets, and then he'd go and vomit. He'd eat food and vomit it in the toilet. So we really have to be careful with who we get our information from. A lot of these people are not credible. And especially today, many of us can be very gullible and really put our trust in these people and end up ruining our health when we try to do it 100%, as I did. A guy just told me how the founder of the Vegetarian Society died of a heart attack. And
The Vegan Society.
Yeah, very ironic. The owner of this supplement company, if you live in the States, this is a very big supplement company. The dude died at like 55. He was struggling with kidney cancer, and he was a vegan. And they kept it secret. The company kept it secret for about 6 months until it somehow leaked out. And remember what I said, when I went to go take a colonics, all of these green powders, these superfood powders, were stuck in my liver, and they came out. There's a lot of money in this industry. A lot of people can make money in this industry. So, we're best sticking to traditional foods. A raw egg yolk, I get more nutrition in one raw egg yolk than I got in $600-700 worth of supplements that I buy. Yeah.
Okay, man. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.